The East India Company was one of the most powerful and controversial corporations in history. More than just a trading enterprise, it wielded military and political power on a scale that no other private company ever had. From its humble beginnings in the early 17th century to its eventual downfall in the 19th century, the company's story is one of ambition, conquest, and exploitation. The origins of the East India Company. The East India Company was founded on December 31, 1600, with a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I, granting London merchants exclusive trade rights with the East Indies. Competing with dominant Portuguese and Dutch traders, it initially struggled, but secured key Indian trading posts like Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta by the mid-17th century. These settlements became the foundation of British influence in India. Through treaties and trading rights, the company expanded its presence, shaping the region's economy and politics for centuries. The shift from trade to power. While the company was initially focused on trade, competition with European rivals and the unstable political climate in India pushed it toward military expansion. The turning point came in 1757 with the Battle of Plassey. Robert Clive, a company officer, led a small but well-trained force against the Nawab of Bengal and defeated a much larger army. This victory allowed the East India Company to take control of Bengal, one of India's wealthiest regions. This battle was significant because it marked the beginning of British political rule in India. The company installed puppet rulers who were loyal to British interests and established control over Bengal's economy. Soon after, it implemented land revenue systems that extracted immense wealth from Indian farmers. This shift from a commercial enterprise to a governing power was unprecedented in world history. From this point on, the company transformed from a trading entity into a full-fledged imperial power. It collected taxes, enforced laws, and expanded its territorial reach. Over the next several decades, it used a combination of military force, diplomacy, and economic manipulation to conquer much of India. It fought wars against native kingdoms such as Mysore, the Marathas, and the Sikhs. By the early 19th century, the company effectively controlled most of the Indian subcontinent, ruling over millions of people. At its height, the East India Company had a private army larger than those of many European nations. It recruited tens of thousands of native Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, to fight in its campaigns. This army allowed the company to wage wars, suppress revolts, and maintain its grip on power. The economic impact of the East India Company. The East India Company's rule was marked by both economic exploitation and administrative reforms. On one hand, it built infrastructure, modernized trade, and introduced Western legal systems. On the other, it drained India's wealth, imposed high taxes, and allowed corruption to flourish. The Bengal famine of 1770, which resulted in the deaths of millions, exposed the company's mismanagement and disregard for local welfare. The famine occurred because the company forced farmers to grow cash crops like indigo and opium instead of food, leading to severe food shortages. While millions starved, the company continued to export grain to Britain, prioritizing profits over human lives. This event demonstrated how the company's economic policies harmed the Indian population. The company's monopoly on trade also allowed it to control the flow of goods between India and Britain. For example, every cup of Indian tea consumed in Britain from the 17th century to the mid-19th century was imported by the East India Company. Additionally, the company played a major role in the opium trade, producing opium in India and smuggling it into China. When the Chinese government attempted to stop this trade, Britain, with support from the company, fought the Opium Wars to force China to open its markets. The company's role in British expansion. While the company controlled India's trade and administration, it also played a role in Britain's global dominance. The wealth extracted from India helped finance Britain's Industrial Revolution, strengthening its economy. The British textile industry, in particular, benefited from raw materials like cotton that were sourced from India and processed in British factories. Moreover, the company's expansion into India contributed to Britain's military power. Many of the strategies and technologies used by the British Army in later imperial conquests were first tested in India under the East India Company's rule. Despite its vast power, the company faced growing criticism in Britain. Many politicians and intellectuals began questioning whether a private corporation should govern millions of people. Corruption within the company was rampant, and scandals involving its officials frequently made headlines. The British government increasingly sought to regulate the company's activities, passing laws such as the Regulating Act of 1773 and the Charter Act of 1813. These laws gradually reduced the company's autonomy and placed more power in the hands of the British Crown, the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Despite these reforms, resentment toward the East India Company continued to grow in India. The final blow came in 1857 with the Indian Rebellion, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny. The rebellion was triggered by various grievances, including high taxes, land seizures, and cultural tensions between British officers and Indian soldiers. The immediate cause was the introduction of new rifle cartridges rumored to be greased with cow and pig fat, which offended both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. Many sepoys, angered by the company's policies, turned against their British commanders. The rebellion quickly spread across northern India, leading to violent clashes and the loss of company control in several regions. The British government responded with overwhelming military force, crushing the rebellion after more than a year of fighting. However, the revolt made it clear that the East India Company could no longer effectively govern India. In 1858, the British government dissolved the company and took direct control of India, marking the beginning of the British Raj. The final years of the East India Company. Although the East India Company was stripped of its political power, it did not immediately disappear. Due to a prior agreement with the British government, its shareholders continued to receive profits until 1873, when the company was finally dissolved. By then, Britain had fully taken over the administration of India, ruling it as a colony until 1947. The company's legacy remains controversial. On one hand, it helped establish modern infrastructure, legal systems, and trade networks in India. On the other, it exploited India's resources, suppressed local industries, and contributed to immense suffering. The company's actions set the stage for nearly 2 centuries of British rule in India, leaving a lasting impact on the region's politics, economy, and society. In modern times, the East India Company is often seen as a symbol of corporate greed and colonial oppression. While its name still exists in some business ventures today, the original company's influence on history cannot be understated. Its rise and fall demonstrate the dangers of allowing private corporations to wield unchecked power over entire nations. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.